Hello everyone, welcome back to the Hindu Explain series. So there were some questions with regards to farm acts yesterday, some very generic, some very good questions that all of you have been putting in the comment section. So first of all, one was this question that why would a company agree to purchase something which they have not seen? It's very common sense. We also buy stuff only after we see the product really, right? But the thing is, the question comes, the input is everything by the company. So for example, the yarn, and the machines which produce it are actually the ones provided by this private company. But in farming, this is different because farming in itself is not just reliant on, for example, these things such as the seeds, the fertilizers, the other equipment. The weather itself also plays a huge role in that, and that cannot be controlled either by the farmer or by the company. So there is a gap in India with regards to farm crop insurance. Okay, so that is something that is a separate thing. Nevertheless, the farmers believe that, see, if you are putting everything, then you also have to take some burden for the product itself. It could be like, if the product turns out bad because of these things, a middle path could have been reached in the farm bills that the company should also take half of it and the farmer should be. Why should the farmer bear the brunt of it completely? So that's about it with regards to that question. That is something that is in question because the policy has not been implemented yet. But whatever experience farmers have with regards to contract farming, they believe that this will be detrimental to them in general. Okay, now another question that a lot of people were asking is, why is the protest happening basically from the farmers in Punjab, Haryana, Western Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan? So farming itself, contract farming, corporate farming will only happen where there is surplus, where there is a more produce than what people actually need, right? Only then you can make profit. When you have more than what you need, you will go and sell it in the market, and then only you will make some profit. And that is exactly what happens in this region. The farmers here produce far more than they actually need. Secondly, 50 to 60% of the MSP procurement for the PDS system and everything else with regards to wheat and rice also happens from this region only. And thirdly, this is the region where the land holding size of farmers is far more. See, compare the population density of these regions in comparison to the southern areas, or let's say Bihar and eastern Uttar Pradesh, where farming does take place, but how many people are there to feed and how many people are producing? A comparison of that has been given in the Lok Sabha in 2019 by the agricultural minister, and which proved that there is the land holding size per hectare basis is far huge in Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan and Western Uttar Pradesh. Okay, so that is why these bills with regards to corporate farming will affect the farmers in this region far more than it will in the regions in the south or any other part of the country. So this issue affects them far more, and that is why they are protesting. Now, this is it with regards to the farmer question that you all have. One question a lot of you also had with regards to the Lakshmi Vilas Bank. Now, with regards to that, it is an economic question. We had discussed it when it had taken place. The thing is, what happened with reference to Lakshmi Vilas Bank is something with regards to non-performing assets of banks, okay? And how a bank is giving more loans than it is actually getting in return. The return of the loans plus the interest it earns from them. That is when a bank is unable to furnish or give money back to its bankers. That is something we had discussed, and when the merger actually takes place or when the budget is discussed with regards to economic affairs in January, February, then we'll discuss it all over again. So don't worry. At this moment, all you need to remember is what the Lakshmi Vilas Bank is and what had happened. So what had happened, the bank had ran out of cash, the capital in the bank was not enough to survive, and now it is being merged with another bank, DBS. Okay, that's it with regards to that. The role of RBI and all of those things will be something we'll be discussing. For example, today the RBI will give a review of its repo rate. So tomorrow when we'll discuss all that, I will touch upon this issue again. Okay, now today again at the end of newspaper analysis, we'll cover the third farm bill. So stay tuned for that. Now moving on to today's newspaper. So on the front page, there is confirmation that, see, the Pfizer company has stated that they are also committed to providing the vaccine in India, and Indian vaccines themselves will be available after completion of phase 3 trials. When Prime Minister Narendra Modi had visited the 3 pharmaceutical company offices, then we had discussed all the 3 vaccines for COVID-19 that are in making or are in different stages of trial. And at that front is the Serum Institute, AstraZeneca and Oxford Institute's vaccine, which they have stated they will apply for emergency use in 2 weeks. So we'll have to wait for that. On the right hand side, there is one update. Former Punjab CM and a leader from the Shiromani Akali Dal, Prakash Singh Badal, he has returned his Padma Vibhushan award. He was awarded this in 2015. Okay. Other updates with regards to farm bills, once there is more conclusive proof, we'll discuss it. Okay. Then there is another update. Tamil superstar Rajinikanth will be launching his own party and entering the assembly elections for Tamil Nadu. That's it from there. Okay. Now, on the with regards to national news, again there is not much relevant apart from government courts trying to see how the governments are doing with regards to the COVID pandemic, updates with regards to the farm protests, pollution levels, and farm protests rising in other parts of the country also. And then on the editorial page, okay, the main editorial is something about legal reasoning that we'll be covering today, okay, and other review with regards to why these are not relevant for you. So the first one on the left hand side, timing it right, it is reasonable to plan for school exams in summer if progress for COVID holds. So yesterday there was news CBSE plans to have physical examination. The editorial states that if condition is better, India's climate is far more suitable to have examinations, because by that time there will be summer. So it will be far more, the risk of ventilation, the ability of ventilation in school premises will be better. So then if the condition is better, we can actually have physical examinations, because then that negates the limitations of students. A lot of students may not have technology access, computer, internet, tablets through which they can give the exam. They might not be proficient with the medium. So the physical examinations are a level playing field, and that is why they are preferable over others. Okay. On the left hand side, it's again update with regards to Iran and US, not relevant for us. Okay. Foreign policy, nothing of sorts for us. Okay. This in farmers protest, the core is procurement. This editorial is stating that, see, both the farmers and the government, and why MSP becomes important is because, see, both of them are talking about procurement. Farmers want MSP assurance because they believe if MSP is not there, no one will buy the produce. Secondly, for government also it's important because to sustain the PDS system and under the Food Security Act, the government needs to procure rice and wheat primarily. And the region from where they can do it is the Punjab, Haryana, the states, the belt which I had talked about. So this is a common matter for both of them, and that is why they should amicably solve it. Okay. Then there is an analysis, the questionnaire that usually comes in the Hindu every once in a week, which is, does India's neighborhood need a policy reworking? That why we need to, because our neighbors are moving closer to other nations. Where are we going wrong? Where are we going correct? If you want to understand all of this from foreign policy, then you can. Nothing from CLAT perspective relevance apart from who are the regional groupings. So see, the names of these organizations, regional groupings becomes important from general knowledge in general, okay. These are something that is always in news. There is always a chance with regards to any of them coming with under the heading of summits or something else. So BBIN, BIMSTEC, all these are something that you need to know anyway. SAARC, who are the members of these countries, who are the members of these groupings, where is the headquarters located. So all those details are something you should cover in general. Okay. Now moving on the left hand side is again a moral boost for police keepers. It's just stating that how policemen should also be vaccinated in priority, because one less policeman increases the burden on others, and that is why it's the responsibility of the government to consider them as frontline. Plus, if policemen, for example, India approximately 500 plus policemen have passed away due to COVID duty, and that their children should be given reservation for jobs because the kind of service policemen provide. Okay, now moving on the national news again. Okay, nothing on the this section again, there is nothing specific for us. Okay, apart from, there are two important news. One is this: carefully monitoring Brahmaputra developments. This is India. So 2 days ago when we had covered that on the Great Bend, China believes it is their right on the lower region of the Brahmaputra river to make hydro plants and produce electricity. India is stating that they are concerned and that they are monitoring the situation, and once something really concretely develops, they'll state or comment about it or talk to China. Because see, as of now it's just an intention to make dams there, but do they actually do it? Are they able to do it? All those things, when that happens, then only it becomes relevant. Okay, then there is convicted legislators can't be barred for life. This is a news with regards to something we will be discussing today, okay, in depth. And then then there is another update, okay, that lottery, gambling and betting is taxable under GST. This is a Supreme Court judgment that has come out, that income from these activities is taxable by the states. Okay, this is it with regards to this news. Technically, taxation is something that will not come under legal section of CLAT, but nevertheless you need to keep in mind that these are goods and services that the Supreme Court has stated will be taxed. Okay, that is it. On the foreign policy, again, there is nothing specific for us, in the sense of Donald Trump has hinted that he will rerun for presidential elections in 2024, and then US tightens visa rules for Communist Party members and other people. Nothing specific. Okay, then there is this news about cyclone Burevi. We'll be discussing this. But on the right hand side, as you know, Iran and US tensions are on a high. They are in news. So now there is tension. Iran has stated that they will re-enter the Iran deal, nuclear deal between the allies of US plus Iran on nuclear restriction only if US lifts sanctions. Okay, so this is an ultimatum they have put. So they are also playing diplomatic game. It's a watch for the future thing that we have to see. Once something more concrete is there, we will discuss this crisis at depth. Okay, now again on the economic front, nothing specific for us, and similarly on the sporting front, one update is there. Who is the richest woman in India? The richest woman is HCL Technologies Roshni Nadar Malhotra. That is it. It's a list of 100 most rich women of India. That is it for us. Okay, now on the in-depth analysis. So the first thing is the news that it's an update. Okay, it's a petition that hearing that is going on in the Supreme Court, which is that convicted legislators can't be barred from life from polls. So this statement is being given by the union government. Okay, the case has been filed as a public interest litigation. What is the public interest litigation? It is a petition to amend the Representation of People Act. This is the act that governs the elected members in our country. Okay, under Section 8, what happens as of now, if a person is convicted for a crime and given punishment for 2 or more years, then they are barred from contesting for public office for 6 years. So however long your punishment is plus 6 years. So for example, Lalu Prasad Yadav has been convicted for 5 years and then is barred for 6. So for 11 years he cannot compete in any elections in the country. But the petition is that for people, the politicians, this condition is only for 6 years. But for example, if it is any other public servant, a judge or any member of the bureaucracy, if they are convicted, they are barred from servicing for their entire lifetime. So if for example I am a public servant and I have been caught with corruption charges, then I will be barred from my service for my entire lifetime. Service rules also state that, for example, if a person has been in service for 35 years, okay, in the last month of his service, he is caught taking a bribe. his entire pension for the service he may have given for 35 years. Probably for 35 years he was clean, he didn't take any bribe, okay? And then at the end of his service he took a bribe, he was caught for it. Then his entire pension, other kind of amenities that they are provided will be taken for a lifetime. This is also true for all the judges. If they are impeached, if they are found guilty, for a lifetime they are banned. So the petition is, why should politicians be given scot free for 6 years? So they serve for whatever punishment duration plus a 6 year, and then they can contest again. So if Lalu Prasad Yadav wants to contest again, or any other politician wants to contest again, they can, but no other public service is able to. So this is stating that how in the three limbs of the constitutional governance, in the separation of powers, the executive, the judiciary and the legislatures. So the executive body plus the judicial body is barred for their entire lifetime, but the legislatures can after a period of time. So this is saying that, see, this is wrong. So now what is this petition is going on in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will deliberate. The Election Commission has stated that they prefer a lifetime ban on politicians if they have been convicted, but the government is saying that no, let's just limit it to 6. 6 is good enough. So this is a case that is happening. It tells us how politicians try to protect each other, that even when the Election Commission, the constitutional body, the court and everyone else suffers differently, the politicians want immunity. So this is just to state that how politicians protect themselves. We'll have to see what the Supreme Court decides on this, but this is an update. The law becomes relevant for you all, the punishment that is there, under what section, and how other people are treated differently. So it is a new knowledge, new information for you all that you need to keep in mind, okay? It's a public interest litigation. For what law, for what section, what is the punishment? These are the updates, okay? Now moving on with regards to Cyclone Burevi. Recently Cyclone Nivar hit Tamil Nadu. Now a deep depression, has happened on the southern coast of Sri Lanka, okay, in the Indian Ocean. That has been named as Cyclone Burevi. It has been named by Maldives, and it's a cyclonic depression. So the wind speed is less than 50 kilometers per hour. But you know, the cyclone Nivar was a cyclonic storm with wind speed above 145 kilometers per hour. This is just 50. We had discussed the categories of cyclones when we had discussed Nivar. If you haven't seen that, check that out in the previous video. We'll put a description of that in the description box today, okay? Now moving on with the editorial, okay? What is this editorial saying? The editorial is that personal choices and the constitution's endurance. It is stating that how, with regards to this new law that has been passed by the Uttar Pradesh government, that people who are changing their faith, if they are getting married, have to inform the district magistrate, and they will check whether there is forceful inducement or not, and family members can also complain and say that, so see, this is fraudulent, or something wrong has taken place, or someone is forcing someone to religiously convert. Now this is saying that this is a little bit of history in it, okay? Previously in 1977, Supreme Court had upheld two laws in the case of Reverend Stanislaus versus State of Madhya Pradesh. In these two laws, it was stated that, see, if someone under fraud, illegal inducement or fraud is being converted to another faith, then that conversion is illegal. These two laws by these two states had stated so, okay? That is exactly intention of the Uttar Pradesh law, but it goes a little bit beyond that, okay? This was just for general conversion. Now the UP law is also checking for marriage, but other Supreme Court decisions that we have been discussing over time have also stated that, see, it is an individual's private matter. Under Article 21 and 19, it is an individual's free choice, and therefore the court or the state have no role to play. So this also states that, see, under right to privacy, under the Puttaswamy judgment, this has been upheld that, see, this is now an individual's choice. And recent orders and judgments by the Allahabad High Court also states so that, see, if an individual wants to convert, even if they want to marry someone or they want to get married and change their faith, then that is also their personal choice. The state or the community has no role to play in that. This is what the editorial is stating. It is also saying that when this case in 1977 had come out, the pioneer of Indian legal system, constitutional law, H.M. Sirvai, had also stated that, see, this is a mischief and ought to be overruled, that this judgment of the Supreme Court of 1977 should be overruled. That is exactly what the court in Puttaswamy plus other judgments that we have discussed recently, also the 4 judgments that we had discussed. If you haven't checked that out, we'll put them down in the comments, in the description box again for you all. So if you don't remember them, you can note down those 4 judgments there, okay. But the case of Ashokan KM, that we had talked about, a case from Kerala that was decided by the Supreme Court in 2017-18, is the most important recent case with regards to a personal freedom and religious conversion for marriage, okay. It's a Supreme Court judgment, the most important one, the case of Ashokan KM, okay. That becomes most important for you all in the name. It's probably something that can come in legal awareness for your CLAT, okay. Now this is it for today's newspaper. Now we'll cover the third farm bill, okay, the amendment, which is the Essential Commodities Amendment Bill, okay. Essential Commodities Act has already been in place since 1955. Now what is Essential Commodities Act? It gives the state the power that these are certain essential commodities that need to be protected, or in times if there is scarcity, their price can be set by the state. This law was put in place in 1955, okay. When India was not self-sufficient, we even had to import the food that we needed for ourselves, okay. We had such dire needs then, but now the situation has changed. That is exactly why the government is saying there is a need for amendment of this law. What is the amendment? It states that now you can deregulate. Certain cereals, seeds and other products have been deregulated, and secondly, the government cannot restrict export, import of food produce whenever they want to. So for example, last year when onion prices were high, the government had banned the export of onions. So these kinds of intervention is something that this amendment is saying that now this is not possible. Only under very severe conditions, when the price of a commodity doubles or rises by 100 to 150%, then only state can take such drastic measures, okay. What is the feature of this? Now first is the deregulation of foodstuffs. Certain things have been deregulated, they are not in the Essential Commodities Act anymore. People are free to trade and the government will not interfere. What this means is that, let's say price is high of dals, pulses, onion or any other produce. Even in domestic market there is a need for these, but the producers are willing to sell or export it because they are getting better price outside. So the government cannot ban this trade under the name of serving the people, okay. This is the first feature. The second is a limitation on stock. So under the Essential Commodities Act, there was a limit of how much you could stock. Now that limit is gone. People can now create more stocks, create cold storage, warehousing, and the government will not punish them. For example, previously if you were stockpiling food grains or pulses or any other thing, you could be put in jail because there is a need for this in market, people are paying far more, why, how can you stockpile it? But the idea of warehousing is also this, that you can sell it when their demand is higher, or when prices are higher, you stockpile it and then sell it at that moment. When prices are low, you retain the stock and not supply. This is exactly what happens with every other commodity apart from agriculture. So now why is it in protest? Why is there hue and cry about it? So this is the principle that is now being applied with regards to farming, which is that food from farm is not just an end, but it is also an essential ingredient in the growth of human capital and therefore important for wealth creation. What is the concept behind this? The concept is that farming is not just a community service. It's not a service to humankind. It is also a business. Everything else in India is a business, right? For example, with regards to any other profession where you go, technology, IT sector, manufacturing, there you are in that business to make more profit, right? Now, the intention of the government is that, see, farming is not just a service to humankind, it is also a business. And companies or individuals can make profit out of it. How do you make profit? You profit when you sell it for higher prices. How will you sell it for higher prices? When demand is high and the supply is low. So you limit supply, or you control the supply in a phased manner. You export it to other places where the price is high. So this is now moving farming away from a system of community service, a system for benefit of mankind, to a business where you make profit. So this is a structural departure, okay? The intention of the legislation is to structurally depart what had happened in 1991 when we had liberalized the economy. Till then, the intention was we will produce only that much that we really need. We don't have to make profit because we are a socialist society, everyone should be equal. But with competition, if someone wants to earn more and more, competition and laissez-faire, privatization, free economy permits you to do that. The intention is for certain people, the competition is to grab more and more. Agriculture was not within that because there were stock limits, you could not export it, there were essential commodities, all that. With this amendment, that will go. And that means that farming is now a business. Whosoever wants to make profit out of it will. So, for example, Amazon. It's a business. Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world, how has he become rich? Because he has considered everything a business. He doesn't consider his Amazon as a service. He says that, see, people benefit from mine, but I am still earning that much. Like it is okay for me to make profit out of it. That is exactly what they're doing, right? Internet, Facebook, Google, companies that do serve humanity, right? They do serve our needs to interact with people, to find other things. But at the end of the day, they consider their business as a profit making. They earn money out of it. Now the intention is to make farming also that in India. This is why it is in question. This is the larger picture here, that the idea of the bill is to monetize agriculture produce as a marketable commodity, surplus, profit making, okay, and not see agriculture as a social activity done for service of humankind, something I already said, right? And reduce the inefficiency in supply by altering cropping behavior. So what happens? Let's say, for example, if certain thing in the market is very high, for example, diamonds are high, right? So we buy gold, or when gold prices are high, we buy silver, or when, let's say, the price of 55-inch LED TV is high, so we prefer to buy 49 or 42-inch. So we see there is a difference, right? When price rises, we alter our choices. But what happens in agriculture? When the price of onion rises, we ask the government to subsidize the price because we are not willing to change from onion to something else. Or for example, in the season, let's say when wheat is produced, but we still want to eat rice. So the government is supposed to subsidize the price of rice. In economic terms, that is considered inefficiency. Inefficiency because the supply of that product is not there, but we are asking the government to spend to ensure we are still able to eat. So if price of, let's say, apples is high, we buy bananas or we buy other fruits during that season, right? So that is exactly what they want for other things. That by altering cropping behavior, that if farmers are to see that, see, people are not buying that many rice or wheat, then you change your produce to, let's say, corn. You change your produce to, let's say, make fruits or produce fruits. So those kinds of things that make agriculture also responsive to market demand. It cannot be that because you've been selling wheat throughout your life, you will only grow wheat throughout your life. Or if you have been producing rice throughout your life, you will only produce. Because see, every other sector responds to what the market demands. Now there is more demand for technical education, computer science. So engineering colleges offer more computer science seats, then let's say seats for electrical engineering, or let's say mining, because mining is reducing. Now renewable energy is high, so there are more seats for renewable energy. So because the demand for in market is for something else, they are supplying that thing only. But in agriculture, that is not happening. So now the example is that, see, if price is high and the season has changed, people should alter and farmers should alter also, that they should become responsive to market demands. But what is the concern? Concern is one, that it will lead to hoarding and artificial price rise. See, India is still a very poor nation, right? There are still a huge number of people who rely on the public distribution system. That means they are incapable of digesting high agricultural price rise. If the price will be high, then they will suffer, right? Poor people will suffer. That is first. And then deficiency in domestic market in case of export prices are high. What will happen if exports are higher? Richer countries can obviously pay more, right? But what will happen? We will not be feeding our own people. People in our own country can go hungry, while people in other countries are able to feed themselves, right? So let's say Alfonso mangoes are sold only export basis. They are not sold in India because farmers consider them in India. They think they will not pay the correct price for it, so they only sell it outside. So our population is being deprived of something that is grown in our own country, right? So that is the one concern. And third, government is abdicating its responsibility as a welfare state. When you are removing stock limits, when you're letting people even sell produce at whatever price, even if people are going hungry, then you are abdicating your responsibility as a welfare state. In a welfare state, it is the responsibility of the government to ensure people have enough food in their belly. That is a responsibility. That is a responsibility under the Food Security Act. When all this will go, that responsibility can change. Now, this is a policy plus a principle based distinction. Do you see agriculture only as a social service, or do you see agriculture as a business? Something which comes to education also, right? Privatization, private schools and public schools, those kinds of things. So it's a policy debate which will have to wait. Okay, that is it for today. If you have any specific doubt with regards to all this, put it down in the comment section, and do check out the previous video if you don't remember with regards to the cases of Supreme Court that we had discussed. That is a very important topic for you all. We will put it in the description box. Do check that out and do make notes of those cases and the case that we have told you today. The case of Ashokan KM is the most important one for you all for your CLAT preparation. That is something that will come. Right to privacy, something that is in news, so it will come. So do remember to check it out, revise it today. Okay, thank you so much. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and share it further. And if you are some of those who haven't subscribed to the channel, do subscribe to it so that you don't miss the updates from us tomorrow and the days ahead. Thank you.